Well, welcome to the stage right here, Dave. Bring it on.
Thank you. So exciting. I've spent a career coaching some of the biggest name speakers in the world, and the most exciting thing I've done is coach these four. These guys who are not professional speakers, who have really stepped outside their comfort zone and said, all right, I'm going to do something I've never done, which is one of the great things of EO, by the way, is that people have this opportunity to stretch in ways that they normally wouldn't stretch. And so each one of you have done such a phenomenal job. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. So what I want to do today is talk just a little bit and give you a little takeaway, something that you can use, a little bit of what they learned about how to do this process, because we all hope, I think, that when we get in front of an audience, we can speak better, we can engage people more, and we can do something. I'm best known as an expert on applied persuasion, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So I came to be an expert on persuasion probably the same way most of you came to be experts in your organizations or your expertise. I grew up in a religious cult. From the time I was 6 until I was 16 years old. This is not the cult, by the way. This was a snake-handling, poison-drinking Pentecostal church that we were in just prior to the cult. The cult actually believed in an end-time prophet named William Branham. They believed he was the literal resurrection of the prophet Elijah from the Bible and the forebear of the apocalypse. So we came to Idaho to start a branch of this church. There were about 30,000 people when I was 6 or 7 years old, and today there's about 3 million, including still a church in Idaho. This is where we lived when I got to Idaho, not in these houses back there, the trailers, but literally under this tree. This is the park in Caldwell, Idaho. I'm 7 years old. We're living there in a tent, and interestingly enough, when I was 7 years old, which either dates me a lot or something, nobody thought it was weird that you lived in a tent in the park. It's like, yeah, people do that. And so we lived there for about 3 months while we were trying to figure things out. During that time, I was going around town recruiting people to this new organization with my mom. And I was being trained to be a minister from the time I was that age. And I would walk up to someone and talk to them, some lovely young lady, and I would say to them, you look like such a beautiful woman. You seem like you'd be a great mom and probably a lovely sister. You seem like somebody who really people would care about and somebody I would love if you were connected to me. There's only one problem. You're going to hell, Jezebel, with your whorish makeup, your bobbed hair, dressed like a man. Now, one of two things happen, by the way. You're a completely lovely woman, and I'm certain none of those things are true. One of two things happen, and you could about draw the line at 40 years old. You would walk up, and if the woman was under 40 years old, right, she would say, oh my God, what is wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? Where's your parents? And they would say, take me to your mom. Okay, great. Then they got to meet mom. Mom was the closer. So it was perfect. It was perfect. If they were over 40, and I'm still old enough when you didn't go to prison for things like this, it was a hard slap in the face. And then a grab by the ear and take me to your mom, which was still great because they got to meet mom. She was the closer. And this was my experience growing up. This is what I did. We ate at Albertsons just like everybody else, not inside the Albertsons though, outside the Albertsons. They used to stack up all their old vegetables and like week-old donuts and moldy bread and slightly bad meat and chunky milk outside. In fact, I didn't really know. The milk wasn't supposed to be chunky until I was about 11 or 12 years old. So chunky style was just how you did it. And this is what we did, and this is how we lived. We created a church. We built it here in this place in Greenleaf, Idaho. This probably looks like the churches I would imagine you guys go to. If you look back here on this far side, you see this little downward slope. That was an old loading dock, and it had a piece of chain link fence around it when we got there, and there was a live black bear living in it. This is Greenleaf, Idaho, 1970s. Don't ask me why there's a live black bear in here, right? And it's funny, there was another EO guy who grew up right across the street from this, and he was like, oh my God, I remember that. So they told us if we could get rid of the black bear, we didn't have to pay a deposit on this building. It was delicious. But by the time I was 16 years old, many times along the way, I'd seen the cracks in the system, and I realized that this was not for me, that I had to do something different. I had to change. And my brother had ADHD, which meant he was literally possessed by the devil. And the best way to get a devil out of a child, it turns out, is not beating them senselessly every time you go to church, but trying some other things. I realized that the conflict was going to get so high that I either had to leave or they were going to continue to pressure my family in a way that they couldn't survive. So I decided to leave. At 16 years old, I packed up everything I had in the back of a 1970 Ford Falcon that I'd purchased from the Forest Service. Everything I owned fit in half the back seat. And I drove away. My first stop was the Caldwell Public Library. See, in this organization I grew up in, you weren't allowed to go to movies. You weren't allowed to listen to music. You weren't allowed to have education past 6th or 7th grade. But I'd refused to leave school. Women had to be subservient to their husbands or corporal punishment was allowed. But the only thing that they never said was you can't go to the library. So the library had become my refuge. So I did the only thing I knew. I drove to the library and I started studying. I started reading about persuasion. I started reading about manipulation. I started reading about the heuristics of decision making, the psychology of belief. I had to figure out why my mom made this crazy decision to raise me and my 2 younger brothers in this organization. And I did. But that study has now lasted about 35 years. And along the way, I've learned a lot of things. One of the things is, how do you move an audience? I started learning as a preacher, but then carried that on as a professional speaker. And so what I'm going to do today is share with you some of these ideas that I've learned and developed over the years to persuade an audience and to get people highly engaged with your presentations, just like you saw these people do today. One of the first things I learned about was the hero's journey. How many people here have ever seen Star Wars, The Matrix, any of these great movies? Right? Every one of these movies follows a hero's journey. The hero's journey was an idea built by Joseph Campbell, who was one of America's foremost mythologists. He studied the mythologies of the world, and he came up with this idea and said, every successful culture that creates ideas that spread, every successful religion, it's all based on the same idea of the hero's journey. And so I looked at that as a basis for persuasion. If you want to create great marketing, if you want to create really persuasive arguments, if you want to create wonderful speeches that people remember, it's using this hero's journey. So we're going to talk today about how to create a heroic speech, because the whole idea of being up here is not to aggrandize myself, not to make me look better, but it's to make you feel that there's something possible, that you can do something different and better than you've ever done before. And for many of us, the hardest thing we'll ever do is stand in front of an audience and talk. How many people wake up every morning and think, geez, I'd really love to get up and talk to 1,000 or 1,500 people today. It would just be awesome. It'd be even better if there were more. Well, Joseph Campbell said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And I think that's so true for us as entrepreneurs. One of the interesting things that happened during this presentation process of coaching these guys, and without telling them, hey, this person's talking about that, try to tie to them, try to tie to that, everybody had a commonality about being afraid, about overcoming fears to reach your success. And it's this whole simple idea that Joseph Campbell talked about years ago around finding your bliss. The cave that you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So let's talk about what it takes to make a good presentation, and it's built on this model that we'll call heroic. The first idea is simply to make people feel wonderful, to make them feel like they've connected with you in some way. And the best part to do that is start with the H, which is a hook. There has to be something that pulls people in. What do most speakers do? They get up and they say, wow, I'm really thankful and grateful that you're here today, and boy, it's so exciting, and let me humble myself and be self-deprecating and do all of these things, right? Well, that's useless. It's worthless. It does nothing for your audience. It doesn't make you nicer. It doesn't make them more connected to you. You want to start out with something that pulls them in and makes them connect and listen to you and stops them, right? This was the equivalent of me when I was 9 years old, when people were having problems in church, walking in and laying the healing hand of Jesus on them. You're healed? Excellent. If you're not, there's more later. Trust me, it only gets better from here. So the idea is to hook them, to get them pulled in so that they can think about, what is it this person is going to talk about? What's the thing that they have to say? Most people are afraid to do something like that, though, right? Do you think it's comfortable to walk up to Brandon and slap him in the head and lay the healing hand of Jesus on him? Well, he does have kind of a nice head. It felt kind of good, so it wasn't all bad. The whole idea is to hook them in, get them to stop whatever they're doing, because what people are doing is scrolling, right? We're the most distracted group of people in the world ever. You have to get their attention long enough for them to think, maybe there's something here for me. I better pay attention. The next one is emotion, right? Most people want to go with a bullet point approach to presenting slides. Let me tell you about this thing, and then there's that thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And it's even better if I have 700 bullet points that you can't read from 6 inches away. That makes it perfect. People are guaranteed, well, there is an emotion for that. It's called sleep. Everybody goes to sleep. That's the end of that. We want to get them some emotion going, though. Did you notice how everybody here emotional? They got emotional. How did you feel when these people talked about things that were very emotional or very, very touching to them? Did you feel like, oh, that's kind of funny. That Chad cried because he misses his mom. It's a 40-year-old. No. Everybody steps into that moment and says, oh my God, I would feel just that way. How proud I am of him for being so authentic and open, right? That emotion, though, connects us to you. It makes us human. And when you make that human connection with people, they want to hear more, right? The next one is a realization. As you're doing your talk, you want to build, right? Up to this point where people have that aha moment and they go, yes, I get it. I get what you're going at. I see where this is going. I understand what you're doing, and yes, this is exactly what I needed today. Learn how to do this thing. That realization, that moment of realization is when people deeply connect with you, but they also connect with the information and the message you're trying to share. They can take it away. I can do that. That's the moment they start to become heroic themselves. Finally, overcoming, right? Because everybody has that moment of questioning themselves and saying, yeah, it was easy for Joel. It was easy for Lisa. Of course, she just spent 2 years in the Peace Corps, 9 years in Ecuador, and another 14 years becoming an overnight success. Super easy for her, right? But then something that she had to say makes you think, you know what? Screw Lisa. I can do that too. You know what? Chad's right. I am going to take this leap, and I'm going to do something different. In the moment of my greatest challenge, I'm going to hopefully take that deep breath and do the right thing. And I'm going to make sure that I invest heavily in my children. I can do that. We have that moment of realization. I can do it. So when we overcome those fears and doubts and concerns that we have about what's possible for us, and we just start taking the next steps, you want to inspire action in your audience. Instead of just leaving people wondering what to do next, how to do things next, you want to inspire some action. Every one of these people showed you a path today of success, how they got to their success, but it's a path that you can follow. If it's true that success leaves clues, you guys have had the most obvious example of a Dick Tracy moment in your life today. All of these people have shared with you these amazing clues to how they got where they're at. And shockingly, even for me, as I was going through this, and we did our first run through of these presentations up here in this room 2 days ago, I thought, wow, we are all a lot alike. We have had a lot of these very similar experiences. And probably a lot of you in this room today have heard these things and so thought, I'm no different. Well, that's just it. That moment you thought, I'm like them, they're like me, is the moment that you became the hero in the story. You're on the hero's journey. And that's what we're hoping for as a speaker, as a presenter, is to get people to take a step outside of their own reality and take one step inside of this new reality and become the hero of their own story. And when they do, that's when everything happens. The final thing is to make connections for people. Help people understand how this applies to them, how it applies to other people, and encourage them to do something that's going to impact. Because what's the best way to learn something new? Does anybody know? What is it? Do it. What else? Teach it. Exactly right. So when you learn something new, if you go and teach it to someone else right away, all of the research shows that you'll retain that information better, and that you'll be able to perform the operation or whatever this new thing is that you learned better than you would if you just tried to memorize it or run through it a couple of times. But by teaching it, it forces you to think through, how would I break this process down? How would I do it? By making these connections for other people and showing them, by taking a flower for yourself and giving a flower to someone else, you see how simple it is to impact the life of another human being. And that's our real goal as presenters, is making that impact. We all talk about making an impact. But the moment we sit down to write a speech, to create a slide, we start making PowerPoints with bullet points, and we start trying to make people get all of this information, and we forget to step out of ourselves and connect with people. So one of the big tips I'll leave you with, get rid of the bullet points, 1 point. 1 point per slide, that's it. You know what you're going to say. Teach people. Make them engaged. Make them feel something. If you have to, find Brandon and lay the healing hand of Jesus on him just for a minute. So heroic presentations look like this. There's a hook, There's some emotion. We build to the point of realization. People overcome the resistance in their own mind. They feel inspired and they feel connected to the audience, to the people around them, and they encourage those people to go out and connect even more. The whole point of this process is it makes the listener the hero and it sends them on their own journey. Each and every one of you today should walk out of this room having heard all of these great speakers and think to yourself, I can do this too. That one thing that I've left on the table, that one thing I haven't done, that one thing I've been afraid of, that one thing that I knew I could do, but never did it, and then 5 years later somebody else did it and made $1 billion. But you've got those other 22 ideas sitting in the back of your brain right now that you're not doing anything with, but saying one day I will. Hopefully that they've inspired you to show you that it's possible. They've given you the clues. All you have to do is follow the breadcrumbs of success yourself, and you have to do one simple thing. Does anybody know what it is? What's the one thing you have to do after this presentation today? That's right, start. You just have to start. Just take some action. Whatever the smallest action is that you can take, the smallest action that will get you moving in that right direction, the smallest action that will get you over your fears, that's all you have to do. That one small step will guarantee your overnight success whenever it comes. Here's how to create your story. If anybody wants a quick rundown of how to build great presentations, this is it. Number one, hook, big idea, surprise, curiosity, polarize people, right? Do you think there's people, especially in Idaho, who hear my story of growing up in a cult and think to themselves, that guy is wrong for even saying anything like that? It happens all the time. When people stand up in a group of 2,000 people on a chair and say, you're going to hell while you're speaking, you have those moments of reckoning and realizing that people are just stupid. But, or at least that's what you tell yourself to feel better so you can get off stage. Emotion. What do they have to feel? Do you ever stop and think before you get up and give a presentation, what do I want people to feel? How do I want them to feel when they leave? If you don't, you're missing a great opportunity. The third thing is that realization. What do you have to reveal to them, right? What is that build up? What is that revelation that they have, right? All those great television shows, you know what they do? It's called the Zeigarnik effect. They build, and you're just ready for the grand finale. You're going to find out who the murderer is, and what do? Boom, commercial. You can't stop because you have to know what it was. That revelation helps you build the anticipation. Overcome. What do they have to do next? Help them figure out what is it that they need to do next, because if you don't tell people what to do, they won't do anything at all. Particularly if you're standing in a room like this, they'll think, wow, that was really great. It sounded really nice. I feel good. How long does good feel? Until the first person punches you in the face? And that'll happen today. All of you will walk out of here and something will happen that will cause your mind to go off track. All these feelings that you have in this moment will go away. But if they know what to do next, you can get back on track. You can do the things that you need to do. And then you have to inspire them. What will happen? What's the payoff? What is the payoff here if you guys do that one thing that you haven't done yet? That one thing that you keep thinking to yourself, I should do this. There's a business in this. There's an opportunity here. What would happen? What's the worst that would happen, right, Lisa? What's the worst that happened? Well, Lisa said it's pack up her bags and go back to America. That's the worst possible outcome. It's not so bad. And then finally, connect people. How do they connect with like minds? How do they connect with each other? That's what EO does so well. It connects like-minded people with other people who are doing the same things and helps them get even better. And in this room, whether you're in EO or not, there's 100 other entrepreneurs here, 100 other people who can help you get where you're at, from where you're at to where you want to go. All you have to do is connect. So the challenge then is simply find one other person today that you can connect with, get to know them, find out something about them. Success leaves clues. You've seen them all. Get over your fear of walking up to somebody and saying hello. Get over yourself, because that's what you're really doing. That's the simplest way to build a presentation that no one will forget, that people will remember, and that they'll actually want to listen to, as opposed to coming in and thinking to themselves, oh my God, another 75,000 bullet point slide presentation. Kill me now or buy me heroin. So again, the whole idea here is to make your presentation make the listeners feel heroic. You're taking them on their own heroic journey. You're already on yours. All you need to do is open the door so they can walk in and go on it with you. I appreciate the time of everyone here coming out and listening to these great presenters, watching them do something that they stretched so far to do. But more importantly, I appreciate you being here and stretching yourself. Getting up early in the morning, coming and listening to someone. And I'm confident that every one of you will have found something that you can use. I hope that it will set you all on a path, on a journey that will transform your life, and that we'll see you back here in a year, and you'll be reporting back about what you've accomplished. Thanks very much for being here today.